For years, you were confidently wrong about your own body. Not because you're stupid, because you were taught myths that sounded scientific enough to pass a test. 10% of your brain. Gum sitting in your stomach for 7 years. Sugar turning kids into chaos machines. Today, we're breaking down 40 lies about the human body that classrooms repeated like gospel. And some of them are so ingrained you'll feel personally attacked. 1. The tongue map is arguably the most widespread piece of educational propaganda in history. You definitely colored in that diagram showing that sweet is on the tip and bitter is at the back. But that map is a total lie based on a bad translation of a German paper from 1901. The original scientist simply said some areas were slightly more sensitive than others, but textbooks turned that into rigid borders like it's a political map of Europe. In reality, every taste bud can detect every flavor. If this myth were true, you could place a bitter pill on the tip of your tongue and it would taste like candy. Go ahead and try it if you don't believe me. You will realize very quickly that your biology teacher lied to you, and your entire mouth is perfectly capable of tasting regret. 2. You have likely heard the terrifying statistic that the average person swallows 8 spiders a year while sleeping. This is not only false, but it was also entirely fabricated by a columnist in 1993 specifically to prove how gullible people are when reading facts on the internet. In reality, a sleeping human is a terrifying environment for a spider because you are a massive, vibrating hot mountain that makes loud thumping noises and exhales heavy gusts of wind. A spider has zero survival instinct to crawl into a warm, wet cave that is essentially a predator's mouth. The chances of swallowing even one spider in your entire lifetime are incredibly low unless you are actively trying to eat them, which is a dietary choice and not an accident. 3. Deoxygenated blood is blue. Or at least that's what everyone believes because they look at their wrists and see blue veins. It is a compelling visual lie, but unless you are a horseshoe crab or a Vulcan, your blood is always red. The blood returning to your heart is a darker, deep maroon because it lacks oxygen, but it never shifts into the blue spectrum. The blue color you see is purely an optical illusion caused by the way light penetrates your skin. Blue light scatters back to your eyes more easily than red light, which gets absorbed by the tissue. If you were to bleed underwater or in a zero-oxygen vacuum, it would still come out red. It's basically a physics trick playing with your eyes, not a sign that you are secretly royalty. 4. The idea that we only use 10% of our brains is a comforting fantasy because it implies you have a hidden genius mode waiting to be unlocked. This myth persists because Hollywood loves it, but biologically, it is absolute nonsense. Brain tissue is incredibly expensive in terms of energy consumption. It uses 20% of your body's oxygen despite being only 2% of your weight. Evolution is ruthless and would never allow you to carry around a massive calorie-burning organ if 90% of it was dead weight. We use virtually every part of the brain, and most of it is active almost all the time. If you actually silence 90% of your brain activity, you wouldn't become a telekinetic superhero. You would be legally dead or in a profound coma. 5. If you crack your knuckles, you're going to get terrible arthritis when you are older. Or at least that is what your annoyed mother told you. The satisfying pop isn't your bones grinding into dust. It is simply bubbles of gas bursting within the fluid that lubricates your joints. One dedicated doctor, Donald Unger, cracked the knuckles on his left hand twice a day for 60 years while leaving his right hand completely silent. He didn't get arthritis in either hand, but he did win an Ig Nobel Prize for proving everyone wrong. So, crack away. The only real medical risk involved is that someone sitting next to you might eventually snap and break your fingers for you just to get some peace and quiet. 6. We are constantly told that humans have exactly 5 senses: sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch. This is a lie that dates back to Aristotle, who apparently didn't know how to count, because neurologists now estimate we have anywhere from 9 to over 20 distinct senses. If you close your eyes and touch your nose, you aren't using touch or sight. You are using proprioception, the sense of where your body parts are in space. You also have equilibrioception for balance, thermoception to feel temperature without touching things, and nociception specifically for pain. Reducing your complex nervous system to just 5 inputs is like saying your smartphone can only make calls. You are a biological supercomputer, not a toddler's counting toy. 7. Urine is not sterile, and drinking it in a survival situation is a terrible idea, unless you are actively trying to make a bad situation worse. The myth that pee is clean comes from the fact that it contains very little bacteria while it is inside the bladder. But as it exits the body, it picks up microbes from the urethra and surrounding skin. More importantly, urine is a concentrated waste product your body is actively trying to eliminate, packed with urea, excess salts, and metabolic byproducts. Drinking it is like recycling yesterday's trash back into your system. It increases dehydration, strains your kidneys, and accelerates the exact problem you are trying to solve. So unless you are filming a survival show for money, keep it out of your mouth. 8. A defibrillator cannot magically restart a completely stopped heart. Every medical drama shows a patient flatlining with that high-pitched whine, and the doctor yells, "Clear!" before shocking them back to life. In reality, if the heart is in asystole, a true flatline, a defibrillator will not restart it because there is no chaotic rhythm to reset. Defibrillators are designed to interrupt dangerous, disorganized electrical activity like ventricular fibrillation and give the heart a chance to re-establish a normal rhythm. Shocking a flatline does not reboot the heart like a dead laptop. It simply is not the type of rhythm electricity is meant to fix. If someone is truly flatlining, they need immediate CPR, oxygen, and medications such as epinephrine. Television has convinced millions that electricity equals resurrection, but real emergency medicine is far less cinematic and far more precise. 9. You lose body heat just like you lose your keys. Everywhere, all at once, not just through your head. The myth that 90% of body heat is lost through your head is essentially a misunderstanding of a flawed military study from the 1950s, where volunteers were bundled up in Arctic suits but didn't wear hats. Obviously, they lost heat from the only exposed part of their bodies. If this statistic were actually true, you could walk outside naked in a blizzard wearing nothing but a winter hat and be perfectly warm. In reality, your head only accounts for about 7% of your body's surface area, and heat loss is fairly proportional. So, while your mom had good intentions making you wear that beanie, she was biologically incorrect about the thermodynamics of your scalp. 10. Everyone knows the playground law that says if you swallow chewing gum, it sits in your stomach for 7 years. This is a brilliant lie invented by mothers who didn't want to clean sticky messes off the carpet, but biologically, it makes no sense. Your digestive system is a highly efficient machine that moves things along regardless of whether it can break them down. Gum is indigestible, much like fiber or a corn kernel, but it doesn't possess magical properties that allow it to defy gravity and stick to your stomach lining for a decade. It passes through your system and exits within a few days, just like everything else. If you swallowed gum 7 years ago, it is long gone, not building a rubber statue inside you. 11. You can open your pores with steam and close them with cold water. This is a staple of beauty marketing, but biologically, it is impossible because pores do not have muscles. They are simply holes in your skin that house hair, follicles, and sebaceous glands. They cannot expand or contract like a camera lens. Steam might loosen the hardened oil inside the pore, making it look smaller once cleaned, but the actual size of the opening remains exactly the same. You can no more close your pores than you can close your ear canals by splashing water on them. If your pores actually snapped shut, you would probably explode from built-up pressure, which is arguably worse than having a few blackheads. 12. The belief that shaving your hair makes it grow back thicker and darker is a complete illusion that has kept razor companies in business for decades. If this myth were actually true, balding men could simply shave their heads every morning to magically sprout a luscious mane of hair by lunchtime. What actually happens is that hair naturally tapers at the end like a pencil point, and when you shave, you slice off that thin tip, leaving a blunt and flat cross-section. When this blunt stubble starts to emerge, it feels coarser and looks darker against your skin, simply because the soft tip is gone. It is a trick of physics and geometry, not biology. Your hair follicles have absolutely no idea that you cut the hair above the surface, and they certainly don't react by working overtime to create a forest. 13. Carrots do not give you supervision or improve your night vision, no matter how many vegetables your parents forced you to eat. This specific lie was actually created by the British military during World War II to hide their newly developed radar technology from the enemy. They claimed their pilots were eating massive amounts of carrots to spot planes in the dark, and the public just swallowed the propaganda whole. While carrots contain vitamin A, which is good for eye health, eating them will not upgrade your eyes to thermal goggles. If this myth were true, rabbits would be the dominant snipers of the animal kingdom. You can eat a sack of carrots a day, and you will still stub your toe in the dark just like everyone else. 14. Waking a sleepwalker will not give them a heart attack or cause them to go into a coma. The worst thing that will happen is that they will be extremely confused and possibly swing their arms around in a panic because they suddenly woke up in the kitchen. The myth likely started because it is difficult to wake someone from deep, slow-wave sleep, and they often look disoriented or act strangely, which observers mistook for brain damage. It is actually much more dangerous to let them keep sleepwalking, as they could trip downstairs or walk out the front door. So go ahead and wake them up gently, or just guide them back to bed like a zombie that lost its way. 15. Rusty nails do not cause tetanus, and the rust itself is actually completely harmless to the human body. The bacteria that causes tetanus, Clostridium tetani, lives in dirt, dust, and animal manure, not in iron oxide. The reason rust is associated with the disease is simply that rusty objects like old nails or farm equipment are usually found outside lying in the dirt where the bacteria thrives. You are just as likely to get tetanus from a shiny new nail if it has been sitting in infected soil, or even a rose thorn that has been in the garden. The rust is just an innocent bystander in this scenario, yet it has been taking the blame for dirty gardening tools for over a century. 16. Sugar makes children hyperactive and causes a sugar rush. This is perhaps the most widely believed lie in parenting history, but numerous double-blind studies have shown absolutely no link between sugar intake and hyperactivity. In one famous experiment, parents were told their kids were given sugar when they were actually given a sugar-free substitute, and the parents still reported that their children were acting wild. The hyperactivity is usually caused by the excitement of a party environment, not the cake itself. The sugar high is purely a placebo effect experienced by the parents, who expect chaos and therefore see it. Your kid isn't bouncing off the walls because of a candy bar. They are bouncing off the walls because they are a child. 17. Reading in the dark will permanently ruin your eyesight or make you go blind. This is a classic scare tactic used by parents to get kids to go to sleep, but ophthalmologists have debunked it repeatedly. While reading in low light can cause temporary eye strain, headaches, or dry eyes because you blink less often, it does not cause any structural damage to your eyeballs or change your prescription. Your eyes are incredibly resilient organs that adjust to different lighting conditions instantly. Think of it like walking a long distance. Your legs might feel tired and sore afterwards, but walking didn't permanently break your legs. So, feel free to read under the covers. The only thing you're risking is a mild headache. 18. If you get stung by a jellyfish, do not let your friends pee on you, because that popular remedy is a complete myth made famous by television sitcoms. Urine can actually cause the jellyfish stingers left in your skin to fire even more venom, making the pain significantly worse and the situation much more embarrassing. The salt balance in urine is different from seawater, and that chemical change triggers the venom sacs to explode. The correct treatment is usually vinegar or simply more seawater. So if someone offers to help you with this particular method, they are either terribly misinformed or they just really want an excuse to compromise your dignity on a public beach. 19. You have to wait 30 minutes after eating before swimming or you will cramp up and drown. This rule ruined countless childhood summers, but it is physiologically unfounded. While it is true that digestion directs some blood flow to your stomach, it does not steal enough blood from your arms and legs to render them useless. Professional swimmers often eat before races to ensure they have enough energy. You might feel a little sluggish or get a minor stitch in your side if you swim on a full stomach, but your body is perfectly capable of multitasking. You're not going to suddenly sink like a stone because you ate a sandwich. The worst thing that will happen is a little indigestion, not a dramatic rescue by a lifeguard. 20. Your heart is located on the left side of your chest. You probably place your hand over your left breast during the national anthem, but you are technically grabbing your lung. Your heart is actually located almost directly in the center of your chest, nestled between your lungs. The reason people think it is on the left is that the bottom of the heart, known as the apex, tilts slightly to the left, and that is where the beat feels the strongest against the ribs. The left ventricle is also larger and pumps harder to send blood to the rest of the body, creating the sensation that the whole organ is on that side. So, while the sentiment is nice, your hand placement is anatomically incorrect every time you pledge allegiance. 21. The concept of being left-brained or right-brained is a personality quiz scam, not neuroscience. You have probably been told that logical people use the left side and creative types use the right. But brain scans show that you use both hemispheres for almost everything. Math problems light up the creative side, and painting activates the logical side. The two halves are connected by a massive highway of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum specifically so they can work together. If you were actually only using one side of your brain, you wouldn't be an artist or a mathematician. You would be a stroke victim in need of immediate medical attention. 22. Going outside with wet hair or without a coat will give you a cold. This old wives' tale suggests that temperature itself can generate a virus, which is biologically impossible. The common cold is caused by a virus, not by shivering or feeling chilly. You could technically stand naked in the snow at the North Pole, and as long as no one else is there to sneeze on you, you would not catch a cold, though you would definitely get hypothermia. The reason people get sick more often in winter is actually because they stay indoors closer to other people, sharing recycled air and germs in confined spaces. So your mother was right that you should wear a coat to stay warm, but she was wrong about the virus magically appearing from the wind. 23. Moderate alcohol consumption does not directly kill brain cells the way people often imagine. The popular myth suggests that every drink is a tiny sniper taking out neurons one by one, but that is not how it works. Alcohol primarily affects the communication between brain cells by interfering with neurotransmitters and temporarily altering the function of dendrites, the branches that allow neurons to talk to each other. It is more like scrambling the signal than demolishing the building. However, chronic heavy alcohol abuse over many years can contribute to brain shrinkage, nutritional deficiencies, and long-term neurological damage. So no, one glass of wine is not executing your gray matter, but treating your liver like a chemistry experiment for decades is not a winning strategy either. The truth is less dramatic than the myth, but still very real. 24. Eating turkey makes you sleepy because it contains tryptophan. Every Thanksgiving, families around the table blame the bird for their post-dinner nap. But this is chemically unfair to the turkey. While turkey does contain tryptophan, an amino acid that helps produce serotonin, it actually has less of it than chicken, cheddar cheese, or even bacon. You don't see people falling asleep mid-sentence after eating a grilled cheese sandwich. The real reason you pass out after a holiday meal is that you just consumed 3,000 calories of carbohydrates and alcohol in one sitting, and your body is shutting down to process the massive intake of food. The food coma is caused by gluttony, not a specific chemical in the meat. 25. Holding in a sneeze will not make your eyes pop out of your head. This terrifying playground rumor suggests that the pressure has to go somewhere and will launch your eyeballs across the room like missiles. While your eyelids do shut reflexively when you sneeze, your eyes are securely held in place by strong muscles that aren't going to fail because of a little air pressure. However, you definitely shouldn't hold a sneeze in, because the redirected pressure can actually rupture your eardrums or damage blood vessels in your nose. So while your eyes remain safely in their sockets, you might blow out your hearing instead. which is arguably just as bad. 26. The statistic that men think about sex every 7 seconds is biologically impossible and frankly exhausting. If this were true, a man would have over 8,000 distinct sexual thoughts every single day, leaving absolutely no time to work, eat, or drive a car without crashing. This number comes from a misquoted study where researchers simply asked people to record their thoughts, and the real average is closer to 19 times a day. That is less than once an hour. So if you see a man staring blankly into space, he probably isn't fantasizing about anything scandalous. He is just wondering what he wants for lunch or why his knee hurts. 27. You must drink exactly 8 glasses of water a day to stay healthy. This specific rule, often called 8-8-8-8, has no scientific basis and likely originated from a misinterpreted recommendation by the Food and Nutrition Board in 1945. That recommendation actually stated that most of the required water comes from the food you eat, but people conveniently ignored that part. You get a massive amount of hydration from fruits, vegetables, juice, and yes, even coffee and tea, which are not as dehydrating as people claim. Your body is incredibly good at telling you when it needs water through a revolutionary mechanism called thirst. Unless you are running a marathon in the desert, carrying a gallon jug around the office is more about fashion than survival. 28. Your hair cannot turn white overnight from fear or stress. We have all heard stories of people like Marie Antoinette whose hair supposedly went stark white before their execution, but this is biologically impossible. Hair is dead material, like a fingernail. It has no way of changing color once it has grown out of the follicle. The only way for you to go gray is for the new hair to grow in that way, over months. The phenomenon is likely caused by a condition called alopecia areata, where the dark hairs fall out due to stress, leaving only the existing white hairs behind, creating the illusion of a sudden change. 29. Ulcers are not caused by stress or spicy food, despite what every overworked movie character seems to believe. For decades, doctors told patients to drink milk and relax, but the real culprit is a spiral-shaped bacteria called Helicobacter pylori. A brave doctor named Barry Marshall was so convinced of this that he actually drank a beaker full of the bacteria, gave himself an ulcer, and then cured it with antibiotics just to prove everyone wrong. He won a Nobel Prize for his trouble. So if you have an ulcer, stop blaming your boss or the jalapenos on your nachos and go get some antibiotics. 30. Alcohol acts as a beer jacket that keeps you warm in freezing weather. This dangerous myth is propagated by cartoons featuring Saint Bernard dogs carrying kegs of brandy to rescue freezing travelers. In reality, alcohol is a vasodilator, meaning it widens your blood vessels and rushes warm blood away from your vital organs to the surface of your skin. This makes you feel warm and fuzzy on the outside, but your core temperature is actually dropping like a stone. You are literally radiating your survival heat into the cold air while your brain tricks you into thinking you are sitting by a fireplace. Drinking to stay warm is essentially the most comfortable way to get hypothermia and die with a smile on your face. 31. That soreness you feel the day after a workout is caused by lactic acid buildup. Your gym teacher probably drilled this into your head, but exercise physiologists have known for decades that lactic acid is flushed out of your muscles within an hour of your workout ending. The pain you feel 24 hours later, known as DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, is actually caused by microscopic tears in your muscle fibers. You literally ripped your muscles apart, and the pain is the result of inflammation as your body attempts to stitch them back together stronger than before. So, do not blame the acid. Blame the fact that you voluntarily engaged in microtrauma because you wanted to look better in a t-shirt. 32. Vitamin C does not prevent the common cold. This massive lie was popularized by a chemist named Linus Pauling in the 1970s, who was convinced that megadoses could cure everything. Since then, study after study has shown that while vitamin C is good for your immune system, taking it daily does absolutely nothing to stop you from getting sick. It might shorten the duration of a cold by a few hours, but that is about it. Your body can only absorb a certain amount, and the rest is flushed out. So those expensive fizzy powders are really just giving you very expensive urine, not a magical shield against germs. 33. You should tilt your head back to stop a nosebleed. This is the instinctive reaction for almost everyone, and it is also the worst possible thing you can do. Tilting your head back does not stop the bleeding. It simply redirects the blood down your throat and into your stomach. Since blood is an irritant to the stomach lining, this usually results in you vomiting it back up a few minutes later, which is both disgusting and counterproductive. The correct method is to lean forward and pinch your nose, letting gravity do the work. The head back method is just a great way to turn a minor inconvenience into a scene from a horror movie involving your digestive system. 34. Crossing your eyes will make them get stuck that way. This is a classic threat used by parents to stop kids from making goofy faces, but it has zero basis in anatomy. Your eye muscles are incredibly elastic and forgiving. Asking them to hold a crossed position is no different than asking your arm to flex. If a sudden gust of wind or a slap on the back could freeze your muscles in place, people would be getting stuck in all sorts of embarrassing positions at the gym. Strabismus, permanently crossed eyes, is a real medical condition caused by nerve damage or muscle weakness, not by making a funny face at your sister during dinner. Your eyes will always snap back, no matter how hard you try to defy biology. 35. Teeth are bones. They look like bones, they are white like bones, and they contain calcium like bones, but they are definitely not bones. Bones are living tissue filled with marrow that produces blood cells, and most importantly, bones can heal themselves if they break. Teeth are made of enamel, dentin, and pulp, and they are incapable of regeneration. If you chip a tooth, it stays chipped forever unless a dentist fixes it with plastic and ceramic. If teeth were actually bones, you would have to put a tiny cast on your molar every time you bit down too hard on a popcorn kernel. The fact that they don't heal is the entire reason the dental industry exists to take your money. 36. The idea that blind people simply see black is an oversimplification. For individuals who are born completely blind and have no visual perception at all, the experience is not like looking into darkness. It is more accurately described as the absence of visual input altogether, similar to how you do not see out of your elbow or the back of your head. There is no image, no black screen, just no visual signal reaching the brain. However, blindness exists on a spectrum, and many blind or visually impaired people retain partial light perception, shapes, or limited sight depending on the cause and severity. So describing blindness as permanent darkness might sound poetic, but the neurological reality is more nuanced and varies from person to person. 37. Feed a cold, starve a fever. This medieval rhyme has been guiding sick people to make terrible dietary choices for centuries. The idea was that eating warms you up, good for a cold chill, and fasting cools you down, good for a hot fever. However, medical science dictates that your body needs a massive amount of energy to fight off any infection, regardless of your temperature. Starving yourself when you have a fever just deprives your immune system of the fuel it needs to kill the virus, essentially sabotaging your own recovery. You need calories and hydration for both conditions. The only thing you should be starving is the ignorance that keeps this dangerous rhyme alive in modern households. 38. Your appendix is not a useless ticking time bomb that exists solely to betray you. For many years, it was widely described as a vestigial leftover of evolution, something we no longer needed. But more recent research suggests it may serve as a reservoir for beneficial gut bacteria. When a severe intestinal infection flushes out your digestive system, the appendix can help repopulate the colon with helpful microbes, acting like a biological backup drive. That does not mean it is essential for survival. Plenty of people live perfectly healthy lives without it. But it is not just an evolutionary mistake either. It is more like a quiet support organ that usually minds its business, occasionally gets inflamed, and sometimes dramatically demands emergency surgery. Useless? Not really. Overdramatic? Absolutely. 39. That famous illustration of a monkey slowly standing up and turning into a man is the most misleading drawing in scientific history. It implies that evolution is a straight line and that if you waited long enough, a chimp at the zoo would turn into a taxpayer. In reality, humans did not evolve from monkeys. We share a common ancestor with them that lived millions of years ago. We are basically cousins, not direct descendants. Evolution is a messy, branching tree, not a conveyor belt. Thinking a monkey is your grandfather is like thinking your cousin is your dad just because you both have the same last name. The only reason that linear drawing exists is because it fits nicely on a t-shirt, not because it represents accurate science. 40. The 5-second rule is the most scientifically accepted excuse for eating garbage. We all want to believe that bacteria wait politely for a countdown before jumping onto your dropped cookie. But microbiology doesn't work that way. Germs attach to food instantly upon contact, especially if the food is moist or sticky. In fact, studies show that salmonella can transfer to a piece of bologna in less than a single second. The only thing the 5-second rule actually tests is your own personal shame threshold and how hungry you are. Eating off the floor is fine if you want to risk food poisoning, but don't pretend there is a magical force field protecting your snack just because you were quick. 40 myths dismantled, and now comes the dangerous part. Which one did we miss? The fact you still believe, still repeat, maybe even corrected someone about last year. Don't give me a safe answer. I want the one you'd argue in public. Drop it in the comments, and let's see which classroom legend refuses to die. If at least one of these rewired your brain, hit like. Subscribe if you're ready to question the next sacred fact.